When people think about the origins of economic thought, most go straight to Adam Smith, Karl Marx, or maybe Aristotle if they paid attention in school. But there's a quieter truth hidden in the medieval world, a truth Western history rarely teaches. About 1,000 years ago, before capitalism or central banks even existed, a Muslim scholar issued a warning that still echoes through every financial crisis we face today. He said that when money loses its moral compass, societies rot from within. And looking at the world we live in, he may have understood us far better than we think. To understand Al-Ghazali, one of the most influential thinkers of the Islamic Golden Age, you need to imagine a world that feels both familiar and foreign. The year is roughly 1100. Europe is fragmented and poor, still crawling out of the wreckage of the early Middle Ages. The Islamic world, by contrast, stretches from Al-Andalus to Persian lands and beyond. Its cities are wealthy, bustling, and sophisticated. Baghdad, Damascus, Cairo, these are centers of financial and intellectual power. Trade routes pulse with caravans carrying silk, spices, textiles, and silver. Scholars debate philosophy, law, astronomy, and medicine. Markets hum with activity, the empire is rich, and wealth is transforming society at a pace no one fully understands. Into this world of exploding trade and rising inequality steps a scholar named Abu Hamid Al-Ghazali. Part philosopher, part jurist, part theologian, part critic. The kind of thinker who could explain the purpose of the soul and the purpose of a monetary system without blinking. Born in 1058 in Persian lands, Ghazali rises quickly through the intellectual hierarchy. By his mid-30s, he holds one of the most prestigious teaching positions in the Islamic world. But what makes him unique isn't his prestige, it's his refusal to accept the status quo. He sees a world where wealth is growing, markets are expanding, but something is going wrong. A society obsessed with money but drifting away from meaning. An economy flourishing on the outside but rotting on the inside. You don't have to look hard to see the modern parallel. Ghazali begins asking a question few dare to ask. What happens when a civilization gets rich before it gets wise? And to answer this question, he turns his attention to money itself. This is the part that surprises Western audiences most. Ghazali wasn't just a religious thinker, he was one of the earliest philosophers to analyze money in both moral and systemic terms. While Aristotle saw money as a practical invention and later economists studied it mathematically, Ghazali examined money's psychological and spiritual effects. He looked at how money shapes behaviors, incentives, trust, and ultimately the fate of nations. To understand his economic ideas, you first need to understand how he saw money at its core. To Ghazali, money wasn't something to be worshipped, hoarded, or used as a status symbol. It was simply a tool, a medium that facilitated exchange. He compared money to a mirror. A mirror has no value in itself. Its value comes from what it reflects. Money is the same. Its power lies not in the gold or silver itself, but in how it enables people to trade, build, and cooperate. It's an idea modern economists love to claim as their own, but Ghazali was writing this in the 11th century, at a time when Europeans still largely saw wealth as land or plunder. From this foundation comes one of his most important insights. Hoarded money is dead money. To him, wealth locked in chests, hidden in rooms, or buried in courtyards wasn't just useless, it was socially destructive. Idle wealth doesn't circulate, it doesn't feed workers, finance trade, or support families. It suffocates economic life. He described it as freezing society circulation, a phrase that could easily appear in any modern critique of inequality. But Ghazali wasn't just complaining about greed. His argument was systemic. When the wealthy hoard money, they create scarcity, not because resources are scarce, but because circulation is blocked. Prices distort, markets collapse, people suffer. This critique leads him to his next big idea: speculation destroys trust. Ghazali had no patience for merchants who manipulated prices, created artificial scarcity, or profited from crises. He saw speculative behavior not as clever strategy, but as moral corruption, profit without contribution. Those who profit from others' suffering profit from corruption, he wrote, and corruption, to him, was contagious. Once it spread, it seeped into markets, institutions, and eventually all society. You don't have to look hard to see the modern parallel.
But Ghazali wasn't anti-profit. He wasn't against business. He didn't advocate for monasteries or vows of poverty. He believed strongly in trade. He believed markets were natural and necessary. He believed wealth could be meaningful and even noble. His real target was dishonest commerce, cheating, lying, using false weights, hiding product defects, or manipulating information. He believed markets only function as long as participants trust each other. When trust collapses, the economy collapses right after. In this sense, he was one of the earliest thinkers to describe what modern economists now call transaction costs, information asymmetry, and moral hazard, without the jargon. Another core insight was the value of labor. He argued that work was inherently dignified, while wealth obtained without effort was spiritually dangerous. To him, money earned through labor built character, while money accumulated through manipulation corrupted it. This may sound moralistic, but the logic is practical. Societies grow strong when people contribute. They grow weak when people exploit. Ghazali didn't stop with individuals. He also made one of the earliest critiques of state monetary policy. Medieval rulers, just like modern ones, would debase gold or silver coins to expand their budgets, taxing people through hidden inflation. Ghazali condemned this practice outright. To him, debasing currency was theft. It eroded market confidence. It punished the poor who received weaker coins. It destabilized the financial system from top to bottom. He believed the state had a role in protecting fair markets, but that role was limited. Leaders should safeguard the economy, not manipulate it for short-term gain. He warned that unjust rulers destroyed prosperity faster than any external enemy. And again, the modern parallel needs no explanation. Ghazali's warnings to rulers didn't come from abstract theories, but from observing the real behavior of real states. In his time, political fragmentation was increasing. Dynasties fought for legitimacy, local rulers wanted more revenue, and as always, when rulers felt their control over society weakening, the first place they squeezed was the economy. Some raised taxes to painful levels, some debased currency to expand their budgets, some seized merchant assets, while others borrowed irresponsibly and left the bill to future generations. None of these tactics were new, and to Ghazali, none solved the fundamental problem. He believed that corruption at the top spread downward like poison. When a ruler deceived his people, merchants felt justified deceiving their customers. When institutions didn't act with integrity, individuals saw no reason to behave responsibly. The entire economic order, from the palace treasury to the neighborhood market, became a chain of distrust. The conclusion was harsh but simple. A society can endure poverty, but it cannot endure corruption. Economic collapse is rarely about running out of money or resources. It's about the collapse of trust, the breakdown of the invisible glue that holds together every transaction, every contract, every coin, and every institution. When this trust erodes, even the wealthiest nation becomes fragile. From this perspective, his ideas about money make sense. To Ghazali, monetary stability depended entirely on honesty. Debasing currency, lowering the gold or silver ratio, wasn't just bad policy, it was deception. It was betrayal. A ruler who tampered with money wasn't clever, he was a thief, slowly stealing from his own people. A small change in a coin's purity was, to Ghazali, the beginning of financial rot. He predicted that if states manipulated money too often, the people would eventually lose confidence, abandon local currency, and start using stronger foreign currencies. 1,000 years later, these dynamics played out in Weimar Germany, Zimbabwe, Venezuela, Argentina, and every modern example where people no longer trust the promises behind their own money. Today's 21st century inflation debates and anxieties reflect a truth this medieval scholar understood very well. Money is ultimately a belief system. When people stop believing, the system stops working. But Ghazali's understanding of finance went beyond money and taxes. He grasped something deeper about human nature. People hoard out of fear. They speculate out of greed. They cheat when they think they won't get caught. They manipulate money because money is easy to manipulate. They justify unethical profits because everyone else is doing the same. And when a society reaches the point where exploitation becomes normalized, collapse has already begun.
This belief drove one of his most powerful insights. An economy cannot be fixed without fixing the incentives that shape human behavior. Laws matter, markets matter, but behind them all are people acting on emotions, ambitions, fears, and desires. If a society cannot align its incentive systems with productive and honest behavior, the economy will drift toward corruption, instability, and self-destruction. This is why Ghazali emphasized the moral dimension of wealth so strongly. To him, wealth without responsibility wasn't just spiritually dangerous, it was a threat to the common good. He believed wealth itself wasn't evil, but without purpose it was incomplete. A society grows strong when individuals contribute more than they take, when the instinct to accumulate is balanced by the responsibility to uplift. But when wealth becomes disconnected from social responsibility, when the pursuit of profit ignores society's well-being, the system becomes fragile. A selfish society eventually collapses under its own weight, and when it collapses, everyone pays the price, including the wealthy who thought themselves immune. Civilizations rise when they understand balance. They fall when that balance breaks. And this brings us directly to the modern world, a world where Ghazali's insights look less like medieval philosophy and more like a diagnosis of our age. We live in a global economy where money moves faster than meaning, a world where wealth inequality has reached levels unseen in centuries, where markets reward speculation more than contribution, where trust in institutions declines every year, where inflation silently erodes purchasing power, and where financial bubbles grow and burst in predictable patterns. Everywhere you look, you see the problems Ghazali described, repeated on a global scale. His critique of hoarding echoes today in debates about billionaires, offshore accounts, and concentrated wealth. His warnings about speculation align with the housing crisis, crypto volatility, shadow banking, and predatory markets. His condemnation of currency manipulation touches the very center of today's monetary policy debates. And his belief that trust is the foundation of prosperity explains why countries with stable institutions, honest courts, predictable regulations, and transparent governance have stronger currencies and more resilient economies. What surprises modern readers is how little the world has changed. Technology is different, markets are faster, scale is global, not regional, but fundamental human behaviors are the same. If Ghazali looked at our system today, with debt spiraling out of control, speculative frenzies, deepening inequality, political gridlock, and institutional distrust growing, he would say exactly what he wrote 1,000 years ago. When justice disappears, prosperity cannot remain. This is an uncomfortable truth. Economies don't collapse because the numbers don't add up. They collapse because people within the system stop trusting each other, because incentives reward the wrong behaviors, because institutions fail to protect the justice that makes markets possible. Human emotions, human fears, human greed, human shortcuts, these are what drive civilizations into crisis, not abstract economic formulas. Ghazali wasn't preaching, he was describing reality. He understood something economists struggle to accept. Money is not a mechanical object, it's a moral ecosystem. And when the moral framework collapses, the financial system collapses right after. This is why his ideas still matter today. In an age marked by record debt, speculative excess, institutional distrust, and financial anxiety, his core message becomes a survival principle. When money is severed from morality, the system eventually breaks. Understanding this idea isn't just financial education, it's financial protection, because history doesn't repeat exactly, but if you don't understand it, it will still crush you. And if this gave you a new perspective, don't forget to subscribe.